Hey there, folks. Welcome to my retro media room. Today, we're going to take a quick look at Haunting Ground and do a first impressions mini review for it. Going to be the beginning of a series where I take random games from my library, ones that I've never played or hardly played, and just give my honest thoughts and impressions on it. Whether or not I'll keep playing it or not interested in playing it anymore or whatever the case may be. So, starting with Haunting Ground here, which has been featured in multiple of my videos with the most valuable videos because this is a very rare and sought after valuable game. I just wanted to go ahead and actually check it out finally. So I do have some thoughts on it. Let's just start with the basics here. So as far as graphics, it's well animated, particularly the main character. She's very well animated, and everything else so far, from whether it be cutscenes or when you're being chased by this big ogre guy, and we'll get to that. Well animated. So all that is very much classic Capcom, very good at animations and motion capture and all that. And as far as the protagonist here, she's interesting. I will say this, in the cutscenes and then the full motion video cutscenes, her face kind of looks weird because like this is actually a more accurate representation of her face on the cover art here, but in the cutscenes she looks funky. But in gameplay, her character model looks nice. So thankfully, I would rather it be that way than the other way around. So the character model's face is very well designed, well animated, and all that. So uh, pretty interesting how the more resource intensive CGI actually looks worse, in my opinion. Her eyes, I don't know, she just looks weird. So I think she looks much better, more like this in the gameplay. I can't comment on the dogs. I didn't play it enough to get to the dog. I'm sure that adds an interesting dynamic to it, but also, as far as the environments, it's a castle setting, which is very much Devil May Cry, Resident Evil 4. It's very much Capcom DNA going on here, so that's no surprise. But it's interesting. It's a typical PlayStation 2 style environment. Decent textures, decent detail, pretty good lighting. So all that's fine. It's very much a Capcom game. There are Capcom references everywhere. That was pretty interesting. If you're a Capcom fan, like the typewriter was is very much Resident Evil. It's a typewriter that you use to solve puzzles. It's funny because there's two DNAs you can see in this. There's Resident Evil because the fixed camera angles that are kind of like more like Code Veronica fixed camera angles in a 3D environment where some move and some are fixed, or some are static and the others are fixed and simply rotate. Then this also shares quite a bit of DNA with Clock Tower because of the running and hiding mechanics. Because you can fight back a little bit against this ogre that chases you around the castle trying to get you, but ultimately you need to run away and you need to hide and survive. That is very much Clock Tower. So that aspect of it I like quite a bit because I love Clock Tower. So that's in the gameplay aspect of this. Now, as far as sound, it has really interesting and unique soundtrack, pretty creepy. But what I like about it is how dynamic it is. So when you're being chased, the music changes and alters depending on what's happening while you're being chased, because there's a system where you have your stamina and you have essentially your sanity, where the more scared you get and the more intense it gets, the screen changes in color and contrast, and it becomes really intense, and then her animations change, and it literally becomes like when you're in those horror movies when the girl is running from the killer and she's falling down, tripping on herself and freaking out. It's literally that, but in gameplay. So it's pretty interesting, pretty intense. I appreciated that aspect of it. With that also said, the controls are mostly solid. Running around feels good. Just running around in general. The door mechanic is interesting because you can open a door and leave it open or close it manually. So I like the concept of it, and you actually use it as a mechanic for while you're running away. And there are these little spirit floating things that go around, and they can cause issues to you if they touch you, and you can close them off with doors. It's a little clunky closing the doors when stuff's really happening, but otherwise interesting mechanic. If you like Clock Tower in terms of fun factor, this game is pretty interesting for Clock Tower fans, especially since there's not much out there. It's like Clock Tower outside of that series. So I do like the setup for the story, how she wakes up with amnesia doesn't know, she has very little memory of what happened. All she remembers is that she was in a car and maybe a car wreck and then ended up there. There's a lot of mystery going on. You're figuring out as she's figuring out what's going on, who she is, why she's there, who these people are in the castle, and so on. Now, some of the issues I have with the game, mainly the themes of the game and the story set up so far. I can't judge the story as a whole because I haven't beaten it or anything, but in terms of the tone and what they're setting up for, uh, it's kind of got some hypersexualization, which for me takes me out of the experience. Like Clock Tower doesn't have any of that whatsoever, and that's a classic game. This, on the other hand, the theme is that they apparently are wanting to impregnate her in some way or another. And even the ogre, he calls her my darling, and he chases you around, and he kind of gropes himself at certain moments as he's chasing you, and when the ogre does get a hold of you and kills you in any way, this happens. Yeah, that's not what I was expecting, and it's a little much for me. That kind of takes me out of the experience. Like I said before, I think some of these themes are a little bit much, and I don't know what he was doing to her or not doing to her, but I don't even want to know. Maybe that's the point, but that's not necessarily for me. Yeah, so the game is a little creepy in that aspect, and not in a good way, in my opinion. Doesn't really do it for me. And trust me, I'm a veteran of many horror films, of the worst, some of the worst of the worst of horror films out there, some of the craziest movies ever made, some of the craziest games ever. But anymore, not really what I'm seeking in a gaming experience, to be perfectly honest, for me. Now, if that's your thing, cool. But for me, it takes me out of it. Now, if you want to, now if you disagree or if you agree, let me know in the comments. Tell me what you think of Haunting Ground. If you're a fan, if you dislike it, whatever. I think it's interesting. There's things about it I like. I'm not sure how much I'm determined to get back into it and beat the game or anything. I am curious about the story, though. I do want to know what. Maybe it gets better. Maybe it's kind of meant to creep you out at first, and it gets more interesting, and it's not so much about the sexualization and creepy factor as much as it is actually has a decent story. I'm not sure, but the setup for it, like I said, it's a little bit too much in the creepy zone for me, in that aspect, and it's a little bit not really my thing. So, all right, well, that was kind of my first impressions and mini review of Haunting Ground. Uh, I'm looking forward to doing some more games. Just like I said, it's just initial impressions, what I think and feel when I play a game for the first time, and yeah, you never know. You never know how I'm gonna if I'm gonna like them or not. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.